Hey guys, tonight we travel to Byzantium, now modern-day Istanbul, Turkey, and meet a monk who lives in a monastery just outside the city walls. To be more precise, we're meeting him at around 4 Amma. You trudge wearily down the path leading to your cell. Your bare feet slap against the hot stone, the kind of heat that radiates even in the middle of winter. It must be close to 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Above you, the dome of the monastery leaks light onto the flagstone floor through a crack in the roof tiles. Maybe you can get some sleep after all. But wait, what's that sound? A low growl reverberates through the stones. You recognize it instantly, the sound of hunger. You sigh and slowly walk over to where your cat is curled up on a shelf. He opens his eyes, revealing those piercing green orbs, and he stretches lazily before sauntering off again. Breakfast time. What is a Byzantine monk's life like? Historians still argue whether the Byzantine Empire was the continuation of the Roman Empire or its own distinct civilization. However, one thing is sure, monks living in the shadow of the Hagia Sophia followed a strict daily schedule. Much like the one you'll soon be keeping as a member of the monastery, life begins early. By 3 monks are already awake and preparing for the day. After a night of fitful sleep, you too rise from your humble cot. You splash cold water on your face, thankful for the break from the oppressive heat. After all, today is Saturday, the Lord's Day, and so tomorrow you will have an extra service to attend. After washing yourself, you throw on your usual black robes and head downstairs to the refectory for breakfast. The other monks are already there, their bald heads gleaming in the candlelight. Their bowls are already filled with bread, cheese, dried fruits, and nuts. They've been eating silently for the past half hour. Monasteries were supposed to be places of quiet contemplation. While that didn't always happen, especially when raiders attacked or a new batch of recruits arrived, the ideal was certainly to live a pure life dedicated to God and study. A small fire crackles in the center of the room, warming the monks as they digest their meals. Some monasteries even had schools attached to them. You sit in silence, enjoying the comforting warmth and the peaceful atmosphere, at least until your cat jumps up on the table and knocks over a glass of milk. You shoo him away and clean up the mess while the other monks glare at you. After breakfast, it's time to get to work. The hours between dawn and noon are spent in prayer, work, or study. You decide to join the group working on the monastery's latest project, a new set of vestments for the high altar. Some monks prefer the solitude of their cells, poring over ancient texts or copying manuscripts. What you didn't notice was that the fly landed in a pool of blood. Others work together, crafting icons or weaving cloth. As you sit down to work, a fly crawls across your workspace. You flick it away without thinking much of it. It belonged to the rat that died under the loom earlier this week. At least it wasn't poisonous. The sisters might have screamed if it was. After a quick lunch of bread and water, you and the other monks gather for the afternoon services. The chanting begins, echoing through the great church. Even though you've heard these prayers countless times, you still find solace in the familiar words. As the sun begins its slow descent, you return to your cell once more. The evening is your own to spend as you please. You could read or write, but you decide to take a long bath instead. The hot water soothes your aching muscles, and you feel yourself drift off to sleep. You'd forgotten how nice it was to bathe every day. Being out in the open air so much meant getting dirty was basically a full-time job. And don't even ask about indoor plumbing. There wasn't any, at least not in this monastery. But then suddenly your cat leaps into the bathtub, startling you so much that you almost fall backwards. You scold him gently and try to lure him back outside with a saucer of milk. He doesn't budge. Clearly, he expects you to share your bath with him. Scooping him up, you climb into bed and finally drift off to sleep. You dream of chasing mice through endless fields of grain. Wait, what was that sound? You jolt awake in your cell. It's pitch black and silent except for the sound of your own breathing. Was that just a dream? Outside, you hear the muffled sounds of the city. How late is it? You fumble for your lamp and strike a match, lighting the wick. 4 a.m. You look over at your cat, who's fast asleep. You smile. At least you're not alone. You spend the next few hours writing in your journal, catching up on the day's events. Then it's time for bed. You tuck yourself in and try to ignore the scratching at your door. Tomorrow will be another busy day at the monastery. For now, sleep comes easily and you dream of cats chasing rats through fields of grain. Now, the average lifespan of a Byzantine monk was probably pretty similar to that of people living in the general population, which means our unnamed narrator probably lived to be somewhere in his mid-60s. So let's fast forward a bit to his twilight years. He's still hanging on to life by a thread, both he and the monastery. The Arab armies are laying siege to Constantinople, throwing the city into chaos. This is the year 740. Just under a century later, the Arab armies will lay siege to Constantinople again. This time they'll succeed, but for now, our narrator's life continues. Like many elderly people, he finds comfort in routine. Every morning, he wakes up with the sunrise and immediately goes to work, helping the younger monks prepare for the coming day. After all, it's hard to be a monk without a monastery, and it's even harder to be a monk without books. Much of their knowledge would have been contained in scrolls and parchment, which were written on with painstaking care. It's also been over 20 years since he first stepped foot inside the monastery. He remembers clearly the day he came, how the old abbot had welcomed him and shown him his cell. Back then, he was just a young lad from the countryside, full of energy and enthusiasm. He had wanted to be a monk since he was a child, and now here he was, older and grayer than he'd ever imagined possible. He missed his family and friends, but he knew he couldn't go back. Not only would his family disown him, but he wouldn't be able to bear the thought of having wasted his life on nothing. But what was the point of being a monk anyway? The answer, according to him, was simple. It was to dedicate your life to God and live a pure life free from sin. These days, though, there's barely anyone left in the monastery. Most of the monks have fled to the city, leaving him and a handful of others behind to fend for themselves. Still, he's grateful that he isn't alone. There's an old priest named Photius, a former general who'd given up his life of luxury and bloodshed to live a simpler life as a monk. And then there's Thomas, the cook, a portly man with a shaved head and a perpetual smile on his face. Finally, there's Cyrus, the one who keeps the fires going and the goats steady. That's right. Someone has to keep the goats steady. Despite their small numbers, the remaining monks keep up their daily routine as best they can. They pray, eat, and sleep on schedule, just as they've been doing for decades. In the evenings, they gather around a small fire, sharing stories and jokes, and trying to keep each other's spirits up. Life isn't easy, but they know they can't afford to give up hope. Only the old priest Photius remains, tending to his garden. Not only do they owe it to themselves, but they owe it to the memory of the monastery. One day, the siege is lifted and the city is free. But as the victorious crowds make their way down the road, they pass by the monastery and see the destruction wrought by the war. All the monks have fled. When he hears the celebrations, he looks up and smiles. He knows that life will go on. He may be old, but that doesn't mean he can't start over. With a renewed sense of purpose, he begins to dig in the dirt, planting seeds and making plans for the future. Until then, I'll see you next time. Even in the darkest of times, hope can bloom. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more content. And hey, why not leave a comment below and tell me what you think? Who knows, maybe your words will end up in one of my future videos.